According to the latest rumor, Dragon's Dogma 2 is said to be targeting 30 frames per second on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series consoles. Let's look into this. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So this information is a courtesy of wccftech.com, and as always you will find the link to this article in the description of this video below. The highly anticipated Dragon's Dogma 2 is said to be targeting just 30 frames per second on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series consoles. Let's start off by saying that this is merely a rumor at this point, as the information reportedly comes from a Japanese insider, according to our Twitter user PC Focus. No further details were shared, but this user has recently been accurately releasing information on other games as well. This is interesting information, however, since the game is due late March, but Capcom still hasn't released additional details about the game's visual modes. Also relevant in this context is that the game's Steam page makes mention of estimated performance with 30 frames per second for both minimum and recommended specs. As for the minimum specs, the Steam page lists an AMD Ryzen 5 3600 CPU, which on paper is roughly equivalent to the CPU inside the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series consoles. Now, obviously, the Steam page talks about PC specs, and I did check it out, and indeed, it talks about 30 frames per second. They say estimated performance 2160i by 30 FPS. Estimate might drop in frame rate might drop in graphics intensive scenes. NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2080 Ti or AMD RX 6800 required to support ray tracing. That's for recommended specs. And when it comes to CPU, they talk about Ryzen 5 3600 or Intel i7 10700. So these looks like a beefy specs, to be honest with you. So if you want to tell me that these CPUs are just going to offer 30 frames per second performance, well, that's not really that great. So it's either the game is very CPU intensive, and you are looking at the graphics and the gameplay from the game and not sure if, well, it's if it shows, if you know what I mean, like, the game looks great, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if that's that demanding. But anyway, it is what it is. And also the game is running on the enhanced RE engine, and in the past Capcom would use that game engine for like more close quarters kind of games, like Resident Evil, for example, right? Not really an open world game, so maybe that's why it's so demanding. Hopefully they will optimize better and that kind of stuff. But the article continues here. If true, we are pretty sure that console players will be disappointed with the game only running at 30 frames per second on their consoles. As said, take the information above with a fair point of salt, as Capcom hasn't officially revealed the game's console details. Also, we haven't been able to verify whether this is a legit source. Still, we wanted to share this piece of info. Dragon's Dogma 2 is releasing on March 22nd for PC, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series consoles. So yeah, I mean, still guys, just the fact alone that, Steam page is showing these recommended specs for 4K or 1080p, but still 30 frames per second is worrisome a little bit. But still, sometimes in the past we've seen recommended specs for number of games being very, very high, and then we've seen games actually being quite well optimized and not as demanding for the hardware as in the official specs, right? I mean, also on PC, and same goes for consoles, you can just crank some of the settings down a little bit to there's a number of settings for CPU as well, so we'll see, we'll have to wait and see. But also I've seen Digital Foundry talking about this game. I think John Lindemann in one of their podcasts a while ago, he mentioned that this may be a 30 frames per second game on consoles for sure. Obviously on PC it's up to what sort of settings you go with within the game, and also the hardware you've got. So we will have to wait and see, but that would not be the first game that is quite demanding. And obviously this is a proper next gen game, I guess. This game doesn't show, I mean, the gameplay that you're actually looking at it right now looks pretty good. So the graphics and I guess the level of details is quite all right, I would say. But sometimes, and there's been a number of games like that. There were occasions where we would get a game, 30 frames per second game at launch, and they would offer additional performance modes too. But the question is, do we want to go with performance, or would you want to go with performance for a price of worse graphics? Because that would have to be the case. So now obviously I'm not, for those of you that are wondering whether to, play on PC, for example, we still don't know how this game is going to run on PC. The fact alone that there's this talk about 30 frames per second on consoles only may indicate that it will be quite demanding game on PC too. So like I said, we will have to wait for some performance benchmarks first, and then we'll see how that goes. But Dragon's Dogma looks really, really good. It's an action-packed RPG, pretty cool setting, and graphics looks really, really good too. And it's using RE engine, so Resident Evil engine. Not sure if that's the latest iteration. I'm sure you remember that I reported that the next-gen RE engine will be using the next-gen features like mesh shaders, for example, and that kind of stuff. So I can't really comment on that, but if you actually look at minimum specs, they talk about GeForce GTX 1070 as being the minimum GPU to run this game, and that GPU doesn't come with mesh shaders at all, right? So looks like that this is not the latest iteration of the game, and it would actually make sense because they just announced, like not just like late last year, they announced their next iteration of RE engine, and Dragon's Dogma 2 has been in development for a while now, so it must be still using the previous version of the engine, right? But hey, anyway, that doesn't change anything when it comes to the actual frame rate on consoles. So like I said, we'll have to wait for the benchmarks. We'll have to wait for the official information from Capcom. So far, they haven't really commented on that. They haven't confirmed nor they denied performance modes. So, who knows? Maybe it's just a case of them focusing on resolution 30 frames per second mode first. That's not the first time we've seen that, and maybe there will be a performance mode too, but either you know, they haven't really decided whether to put that in the game just yet, or maybe it will be coming later. We've seen that happening in the past with many games like Plague's Tale Requiem, for example. It started as a 30 frames per second game on Xbox Series and PlayStation 5 consoles, and then they added performance mode, which actually runs pretty well too. So anyway, guys, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about it. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.